Would you ever go to like a twin conference or anything and meet a bunch of other twins?
I don't know. I think it's a little weird.
I think it's kind of, I would be literally frightened. What's going on, guys? My name is Andrew James. Welcome back to another episode of the Globe Focus podcast. This week, I had the honor to sit down with my new friend, Madeline Sonnendecker. She is a world traveler, model, and twin, and we talked about her life growing up in North Carolina, all things about identity, what it's like to be a twin, her favorite travel locations, and everything like that. If this is your first time listening to the Globe Focus podcast, any support is greatly appreciated. I had a really great time talking with Madeline, so without further ado, let's jump into the discussion. Welcome back to Globe Focus podcast episode, I don't even know. I am currently here in LA with a new friend of mine, Madeline Sonnendecker.
Yes. Hey guys, what's up?
Is it Maddie or Madeline?
I usually go by Maddie, actually.
Maddie, right?
Yeah.
And where are you from? Where were you born?
I was born in North Carolina in a small town outside of Raleigh.
Which is pretty cool because I was born in Virginia. And I was talking to someone, I think a lot about how when I'm traveling abroad, when you're traveling abroad and you meet an American, do you feel any sense of camaraderie? Because I don't, usually. Maybe like a little bit.
No, honestly, no, not really. But I will say, I feel like when I meet people from North Carolina or just the East Coast, I do get that feeling of like, yeah, we're the same.
I was doing a shoot last week in Florida, and their two talent were from South Carolina. And I was like, I'm from Virginia. And as soon as I go that, oh, you're from Virginia. Not because Virginia, South Carolina, North Carolina, they are all different places, obviously. But there's kind of a general, like my grandma lives in North Carolina. I have friends that live in South Carolina. I've lived in North Carolina for a few years. So there's a general sense of like cultural understanding, I guess, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people like accuse Americans of not having culture.
Yeah.
But that's like impossible, right?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I don't know. I think Americans get a really bad rep.
We do get a bad rep. Yeah. No, but we deserve it sometimes because like when I was in Panama earlier this year, we were at a table. Most of the people there were Germans, and then there was a table of American doctors, and they were loud and they were obnoxious, and their general sentiment was arrogance. But that's probably, maybe that's not an American thing. Maybe that's a doctor thing. I don't even know. But
yeah,
I think sometimes it's embarrassing when I see other Americans.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like within any culture, you have like people that are really good people, and then you also have people that are not the best people.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, like Americans get such a bad rep. I will say when I travel, people are often like, oh, well, you're not like most Americans I've met. And I take that as the biggest compliment, which I hate because, you know, I am American. I should be proud to say I am American. But
well, the problem is that it's coming from a point of insult. Because they're saying, oh, well, you're like one of the ones that's not annoying as opposed to the standard one being annoying.
Right.
So it is kind of like a backhanded compliment. But I get it. I do get it. I mean, I generalize it. I just think in general, the sentiment in America is like everyone looks at America and it's like a lot of Americans still are under the impression, and I would like to disillusion you, that when other countries look at America, they're like, that's where we want to be. Some people are like that, but most people aren't.
yeah.
I think.
I feel like America has this, like, I don't know, for a lot of foreigners that I've met personally, it is this, like, dream.
Yeah?
And, like, they would love the chance to go.
Even, like, Australia?
To America. Yeah, Australians, they love Americans. And, like, honestly, I actually found that
I think they like you.
Maybe.
To be honest with you, I mean, like, if you're the American in the situation, people are gonna like you more. To be honest,
I will say
you're a pretty good representation. Let's be real.
No, I will say that they liked our accents. Like they thought that they were kind of like cute, and like I think if you go most other places, they're gonna like think of the American accent's just terrible.
Yeah. Well, I heard what was really interesting perspective for me was that I heard that to people in the UK, a lot of them have heard American accents since they were kids because of media, because of film and TV. And so, you know, like in old movies, they have that transatlantic accent where they sound like a different...
Right, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
I do, yeah.
And so, but if you... In TV, it makes sense. But if you actually heard someone speak like that, it would be jarring. Like, if you're like, hello, how's it? I don't even know how to do it, but you know the accent, right?
It sounds so nice, though.
It sounds great, but it would be weird if I started talking in that right now.
It would. You'd be like, who the fuck is this guy?
That's what it is for people in the UK with Americans who have never heard an American. They think it's an accent that only exists in media.
I've never thought about it that way. That's very interesting. I just hate that it's like, it almost feels like people think the Americans are stupid because of the accent. Like maybe it's like the California accent where like they talk slower and they kind of like trail off at the end of their sentences, or even like for us, like the Southern accent. I feel like it has this like stigma of like, oh, they're not literate.
They're not smart. I mean,
yeah,
like
they're not
this,
smart.
that's literally a sentiment, I think.
Right.
That's like, people do think that it's wrong, and you can get around that. And then if you do get around it, I think it becomes charming quickly. But I would say in general, which is crazy, like if you have a Southern accent, people will start you lower intellectually in their mind.
Yeah.
Which is kind of wild when you think about it. But we should get past this America stuff. I feel like we're getting to... I did this in my last podcast too. I was talking about America and all the comments went super alt-right, super quick. And I was like, okay, this is not a political show. I want to talk about travel. So you've been traveling for a while.
Yes.
And you have a twin sister that you've traveled pretty much everywhere with, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So how did you get into the travel space? You were born in North Carolina.
Right.
Just walk us how you got to traveling.
Okay, yeah. So I was born in North Carolina. I ended up going to college for 2 years and kind of felt like it wasn't the path for me. I didn't really know what I wanted to study, and it felt like I had to decide. I did 2 years, and at that point, my twin sister, she had started modeling, and she traveled to Cape Town, South Africa, and by herself when she was 19.
Oh, and you're like, whoa.
And I was in college, like studying, and couldn't pick a major, and was about to like start having to take out student loans, and like she was doing so well financially, and then also seeing the world, and she looks like me, and she was like, hey,
you're like,
you know,
if she can do it, I literally can do it.
Exactly, yeah. And I think being from North Carolina too, you kind of get that small town mentality a little bit. Like it feels hard to leave, and I think most of your peers kind of stay and they do the traditional path, and it's college, like
job,
get your degree, get your job, get your spouse, get your house.
That's that's the NFL package.
And
that's the American way. God damn it!
That felt like such a trap to me. I was
USA.
I was like, I got to get off this track as soon as possible. And I always knew I wanted to travel. The first time I left the country wasn't until I was 20. Yeah, on my 21st birthday, I went to Italy with my family. And I remember being in the airport and seeing all the kids with their backpacks. And I was like, I want to do that. Like, they're cool. I want to go with them. I don't want to go with my family. And that was kind of my first intro to travel.
Very nice. Well, let's stop there, because I think... Well, that was still when you were in school, actually.
That was when I was in school,
So we're still getting to when you... What I'm interested in is the jump, because quitting school seems like something that a lot of people want to do. It's always a sentiment amongst everyone I talk to who's in school, basically.
Right.
But I think big switches are scary for people, making jumps, especially right now. I feel like the world's changing so quickly. But talk about it from your perspective. What was it like for you? How did you make the decision to quit? What did your family think about quitting?
Yeah, it was a very fast and easy decision for me, actually.
Nice.
I think I could see two paths. There was the path where I do this crazy thing and I take this risk and I start modeling. Or there was the path of like, you know, keep trying school and figure it out and just do this thing that everyone else, you know, is doing. But for the latter, like I didn't want to do it. And I also was excited by the risk and the possibility of modeling. So yeah, I actually, now that you say it, I dropped out and then I went to Italy after that. So I hadn't done any traveling.
Okay.
And I
you hadn't even tried it yet?
No, I hadn't tried it yet. I felt very trapped in school and being in like a schedule and like feeling like I had to pick one thing and just commit to it. And I felt like there was so many things that I wanted to do, and I had to get out in the world and start doing them and see new possibilities. But the scary thing about that is oftentimes you don't have an example. And the way our brains work, like you can only take things that you've seen other people do and realize that you can do that. You can't come up with something like that's never been done before. Your brain can't do that. So with modeling, I mean, I did have my twin sister, and she's a huge part of me getting into it, and also like how I've had longevity doing it. But it was definitely way scarier, because the other path of going to school, and having all my friends around and my family close by, that was much more comfortable. But I think that was my first big, we like to call it our fuck it moment, where we were like, I'm looking over this cliff. Do I jump? Do I do it?
Yeah. Do you go
or do
for
I
it?
just go back and like hike back down the safe way?
Right.
And I just was like, I just had this feeling that there's something better out there, and I got to do it. And I'm so glad I did. I think that taking risks when you're young pays out no matter what. Like, even if you don't see it anytime soon,
because you're young, so if it messes
up,
you still can readjust.
Yeah.
There's still time to pivot. Later on, that's not true. Like risk management, from a risk management perspective, it's better to take risks when you're young, when you can take risks, because, that's not the case for it does change. But I think for a lot of people, they get stuck right on the edge of the cliff, though. I see it in people's eyes. I know people. I've grown up with a lot of people who always didn't want to take the traditional path, but couldn't quite make the switch. And so I guess was there anything that inspired you? Was it social media? Like what was it, or was it just a deep-rooted sense in self, like that this was wrong for you? Where did it come from? Was it just your sister? Was it that simple? Or did you just kind of always know? Because I always knew I wasn't going to college. I always knew I wouldn't do something traditional, but that's because I was raised in a not traditional way. So I've always just kind of been going that way. Yeah. But like for you, I think you were kind of just going traditional and then clicked off. I
think, I don't know. I feel like I think that I always felt like I didn't feel quite right doing the traditional path. And I always wanted to do something more. And I think too, like a lot of the time when I was growing up, we would get comments actually like, "Oh, you girls should model. Like, what's up with that?" And I think over time, like when you get people giving you this comment, and we got it a good bit because we're these tall blonde twins, and people would be like, "You girls should model. Like, what are you girls doing?" And I think over time that kind of like hit. It landed for me, and
you were finally like, I should do it.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were going to say that you didn't want to do it because people were telling you to do it. But eventually it was like you just got told it so many times, you're like, yeah, I guess I should. Well, okay, let's talk about this. This is something I'm genuinely interested in. Body image in general. Because I think as a model, it's something that people don't consider. From an objective standpoint, I think you've been told and had your body image affirmed enough times that like that you're a good-looking person, right?
Yeah.
But that's not. I've met a lot of really beautiful women who really don't seem to realize it, actually. Like they really have this deep-rooted sense of, and guys can't even understand that, because to us it's like, how could you not see it? They're not even thinking about it. So for you, what was that like growing up? Is that part of why like so many people told you should be a model, that you were finally like, or have you always kind of known that?
No, I really didn't want to be a model, if I'm being honest. Like when people would say that, and in North Carolina, like modeling is not a common career path. I was like, modeling, like what is that? Like, I don't know. Like that doesn't seem like something I want.
It's not like you meet models growing up.
No.
You have no role model.
Definitely not. It's not a part of the culture at all. And I think growing up and being in the body that I was born into, I didn't like the attention. It was really hard for me. I was like actually a very shy kid, and as like this tall, beautiful twin, I had so many eyes on me.
It's a lot of attention. Because even just the twin element had so much more attention.
Right. Yeah. Which it was really hard. I'm not gonna lie. It was really hard. It was attention that I didn't want. And I also kind of felt like it wasn't like, "Hey, Maddie, it's nice to meet you." It was like, "Hey, twins, like, what's up?" And you don't really get that individual recognition. And on top of it all, it's getting attached to your looks, and it's
you're being defined by the way you look.
Yeah, so I hated it, and I didn't want to get into modeling. And even when my sister first started, I was like, no, like it's not really me. And growing up, I didn't know that I was attractive. Yet, like, yes, people would look at me a lot and they would say nice things, but I kind of didn't believe it. And honestly, like, I didn't really like look at myself often, if that makes sense. Like I didn't study myself in a mirror. I didn't put a lot of effort into my clothes.
How many siblings do you have?
There's 6 kids in my family.
That's why.
Yeah.
Because I think if you were like, if it was this, can you imagine if it was just your parents, like you had different parents, let's say, and it was just you and your sister, like so much more energy, like not energy, but like that would be a lot of attention. And I think it's probably really good that you were raised the way that you were, where people weren't maybe like, probably your siblings just humbled you, right?
Oh, absolutely. I'm honestly
that's what I'm trying
grateful.
to say is like,
yeah, like you have to, you're taught at a very young age that it is not all about you, and this is a group effort, and you're gonna have to be patient and share.
I mean, I'm so in like my own little like everyone's in their own little bubble, social fake world of some kind, and I'm in like my own little. And sometimes I just like I get so wrapped up in like Instagram or whatever, traveling, and then I go home and I'm with my family, all of them in Virginia, and I'll just like say something so, just like, I don't know. I think it's good to have siblings and people to like humble you and just to bring you down to like reality. Yeah. So that probably helped you a lot growing up, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But then like getting into the modeling, my sister and my dad, actually, of all people, they were very encouraging and supportive, and they were like, this is a really good opportunity. And it wasn't something.
Your dad was supportive. That's interesting.
He was very supportive, because he saw the success that my sister had, and it was kind of this like, it was this ticket to get out of North Carolina, and this like, suddenly I could do this job that was fun and exciting, and I could get a lot of money, and that seemed like the only way I was going to be able to travel, because again, like I came from a big family, and at a pretty young age, like I was on my own. I was paying for everything. I wasn't getting help with college. So that's again something that kind of was like a good driving force in me dropping out, is I was like, I'm not going to go into debt for my art degree. I was studying art. So yeah, I got a lot of encouragement from them, and it wasn't until I started modeling that I actually began to really look at myself. And I think it was good in a lot of ways. Like when I first started, I got photos back, and I was like, wow, like I've never seen myself like this. Like, well, maybe I am like beautiful.
Like, maybe I am beautiful.
Whoa, this is nice. Yeah.
Because when you have a real photographer who understands angles and can show, because I think what it is, body image issues can come from a lot of different things, but it can definitely come from, the problem is there's so many cameras now. Like there just wasn't that many mirrors. It's like to see yourself before, you'd either have to come across a mirror or like see a reflection in a pond. Those are the times when you were confronted with your self-image, you know? Now it's on the phone. And it's all fake with filters, you know, like the AI filters are incredibly good, that everyone is kind of, not everyone is beautiful, but pretty soon everyone will be beautiful on social media, like filtered through enough. Where was I going with that? Basically, I just think, oh, fuck, I did lose my train of thought. I hit the pen too many times.
No, it's all good.
Body disillusionment, seeing yourself, body image issues, I guess. I don't know.
I definitely think over time with the modeling, though, like it's very tough. Like it is true what they say, like it's a very tough industry to be in. And, you know, you can, like I just did a photo shoot the other day, and I have all these inspo photos. I created like a mood board, and you have these high expectations. And then if you get the photos back and it doesn't look like that, and you don't like how you look, it's very discouraging. And then on top of it all, your livelihood is attached to the way that you look. So now as someone that grew up not paying attention to the way that I looked and paying attention to things that I think matter a little bit more than that, I was now having to be very critical of my appearance. And like, for example, like I used to have this long, curly, I have naturally very curly hair, like hippie hair. My hippie hair is what I used to call it. And like I wouldn't cut it.
But the modeling agencies didn't like the hippie hair?
Oh no, I had to cut it straight away.
No. Yeah. Being attractive is like an asset, like any kind of other asset that people have. Some people just happen to be athletic. Some people happen to be, you know, beautiful. Some people happen to be born into money. It's like an asset that can just be, everyone can have it. And then, but that's all it is. It doesn't, it's not who you are. It's not your personality. And it's something that comes and goes for most people, you know? So it's good that you didn't realize that you had this asset. Like if from a young age, that's what I was trying to get to with the only child thing. was like from a young age, your parents, you had the type of mom who was saying, you're so beautiful. Like, this is so, that gets in your head from an early age. And then you think this is my only asset. This is my purpose, to be this beautiful person. But because you weren't thinking like that from a young age, you're like, okay, I'm in a period of my life where this asset is useful. It's something that's allowing me to travel. It's allowing me to, I'm also working hard as a model, but it's not like who I am. Right. It's not something I need for the rest of my life.
I definitely think because I got into modeling when I was older, and because I also have that background of, I don't know, my appearance wasn't everything. It's been, even that mindset has been an asset in the modeling industry, because now, like, I don't know, I know my worth it has nothing to do with my looks, and I can realize that.
And other girls don't know that.
Yeah, no.
A lot of girls probably don't know that.
And even like the fact that modeling wasn't my childhood dream, and it's not like I'm going to die if I don't get this job.
Yeah.
That as well, I think, has been a good, like, healthy mindset, and it helps dealing with the rejection. And I also think, honestly, being an identical twin is very humbling as well.
That's true, because there's another one of you right there.
It's very humbling. Yeah, because you kind of, you have to share everything. And
it's like scarcity too.
Yeah, scarcity.
Supply and demand, there's inherently more supply. I'm kidding.
No,
but I mean, like, no.
But yeah. And then, like, getting compared and stuff, like, you kind of realize things about yourself that, like, maybe you don't like, whatever it is. But yeah, being
people talking about anyone objectively speaking, like from like a standpoint of objectification, is usually not good. Like, even especially for people who are who are aware of it. So if it's somebody who maybe isn't conventionally attractive, and you give them like someone gives them the compliment, that can be really sweet, and I encourage people, of course, to do that. But like, if you're someone who is attractive, so it's not that easy, it's not that hard to say, someone's good looking, that it's like devalued, I guess, a little bit. And so you want to hear something else, right? Is that kind of the idea?
Definitely. Yeah. I think, especially like when it comes to things like dating and stuff, someone can compliment the way that you look, and you're kind of like, hey, there's some other stuff behind that.
It's like, anybody could have told me. Like,
yeah, you start to question, and it sucks too, like when it's your job. And obviously I'm very public online with my appearance and my face, and you want people to realize that you're a lot more than that. And I think some people have a hard time seeing past that. So yeah, it is tricky.
Yeah, it does seem tricky. I think, and the other thing is that you don't really get sympathy, because at the end of the day, it's like,
definitely.
No one's going to sympathize with the model.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
But to be honest, like, if you empathize, or you can look at it from the perspective, but to most people who, they just want to be you, they just want to look like you. So it's kind of like my tiniest violin, but at the same time, you don't want to take away from the struggles you're going through.
Pretty privilege is absolutely real. Like, that is a fact. And I'm very aware of it. And I'm very aware of how fortunate I am to have the opportunities I do because of my appearance. But it does come with its own struggles, just like anything. I think everyone has their own struggles. And I think
it's just like, it's good. I mean, and that's all you can be. Like, the system is interesting. The whole system is interesting. Being aware of pretty privilege. I was trying to break down pretty privilege from like a psychological standpoint, but it's so deep rooted into society. Like, the fact that people are attracted to attractive people is so baked into society that I don't think you can really unravel it. I think you have to kind of play, like, so if I was just like, when I'm trying to date someone, I no longer care about what they look like. That's logically kind of lines up, right? Because you really want to be with the person who best aligns with your soul. But I think it's ignoring like a reality about being a person, which is that you want to be with someone you find attractive. So it is kind of tough sometimes. But being aware, going back to you, is like being aware of your pretty privilege, or being aware of what that's all you can really do. You know what I mean? It's not like you can, don't give me that, because
I mean, ultimately, like, this is just the life that I was born into, and it is kind of crazy to think, like, what if I was born into a completely different body? Like, a lot of things in my life would be very different. And a lot of my experiences would have been completely different. And I'm very aware of that. But it is my life. And,
it's your life.
You know.
It's still hard.
Yeah, like
still life very is hard. It's just as hard. It's hard in different ways. And you're around models all the time. So to be honest, you're probably like I think your calibration of attractiveness is maybe different because you're just around beautiful people a lot.
And I mean, like, there's so many beautiful women in the world as it is that aren't even models. So like, and again, it's like, it's just not really high up on my value system. So I'm like, okay, I'm pretty cool.
It is a part of what you do because you are a model. You know, it is still a big, you can't ignore it. Like you said, like when you did start to use it as an asset, you had to take care of maybe more than you would have when you were younger, which makes sense. Let's talk about being a twin though, because I think that's crazy. Well, not crazy, but basically there's two of her.
There's two.
What was it like for you growing up as a twin?
So it's funny, actually growing up, I don't think we liked being twins growing up very much. I wouldn't say we were friends. I would say we were very much so like, that's my sister. Like, we're not friends. We had all the same friends, but we were like, but like, she's just my sister. Wow. You guys are my friends, that's my sister. And I think that's just because it was really hard. Like people would put us side by side and they would stare at us, which I hated because I was so shy.
They would put you side by side. They would like line you up. Yeah,
they would just be like, put our heads together. Be like, okay, well, like her face is a little bit wider. Her nose is bigger.
Oh no,
she has this like mark there.
It's like in school, you're saying like, it
was terrible, and I hated it so much. And again, it's the eyes on me. I hated the attention, which is just again so funny that now I'm a model and I have so much. No,
but even modeling, it's like. But it's not like people are professional. So like when you get on set, it's not like anybody is probably surprised even, right? Usually, I'm not saying like, but like it's work. So it's not, it's different kind of attention. Yeah. It's not like people like looking at you going, oh, like,
definitely not. So it's more like, I expect it when I go into work so I can kind of compartmentalize it a little bit better, which is good. But yeah, as a kid, you're like, why is everyone looking at me? And even when we're walking in the street.
And that's from like, the time, like, your earliest memories. Probably.
Oh yeah, it wasn't until
because you're like 6 and you're like, people are looking at me a lot.
Yeah, and I was like, why is everyone looking at me? Like, what's going on? And even now, even today, we will be walking around and I will kind of get annoyed. I'll be like, why is everyone looking at us?
I feel like you kind of know what it's like to be like a celebrity, kind of.
Maybe a little bit
of a celebrity.
Because you just get people staring at you, and I'm like, what's everyone's problem? Like, why are they looking at us? And then I catch our reflection in a window as we're walking by, and I'm like, oh, it's because we look the exact same today.
You're wearing the same thing.
Yeah, or like we both have like our hair styled the same way. Whatever.
That's how I feel about like guys who are like really tall, like 7 foot tall, and they're just everyone. It's like, and it's tough. Again, it's like, it's just big. It's like. You have to find a balance of understanding because the 7 foot tall guy who's like, I can understand if he doesn't want to be a basketball player, right? That's the common stereotype. Because you're tall, you must play basketball. I can understand why that question would get old. Right. But at the same time, you're 7 feet tall. And so like for most people, that is the first thing they're going to think. You just have he has very specific, unrelatable problems. So people aren't easily going to be able to immediately empathize with those problems because they just don't even know that that is a problem. Right. It's the same thing with modeling. It's just like most people wouldn't even be aware to think that this might be obnoxious because to them it's just a completely different kind of problem.
Oh, and it's the same thing with being a twin too. People are like,
you're like compounded like times 2.
Yeah. And the thing about so I actually know someone, my sister knew this guy that was very tall and he had those same struggles of like, oh, everywhere I go, people ask me how tall I am. It's so annoying. Yeah. But with us, at least like when we're separate, I don't get approached and asked if I'm a twin because it's just me. So we have that option of like, oh, suddenly I'm an individual. But yeah, when you are together, it kind of, I think sometimes people meet you and they see 2 of the same and they can't really get past it. And they can't understand that it's 2 different people. And so the conversation, like the whole time, they're just like absolutely bewildered. Like,
I mean, so do you ever meet have you ever met triplets?
So I actually
identical?
grew up with a lot of twins. I think there was
Really?
like 6 sets of twins just in my class.
Really?
Yeah, and like
So
triplets.
you really weren't special.
Triplets too. No, yeah, no. I was humbled
It's
a
good
lot.
that you didn't grow up in LA or something. I
Yeah.
feel like you would have a different, it would be interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm biased. I don't know. Yeah. Okay. So, but then how was it? You and your twin was very much kind of separate. And then you're like, that's my sister.
Right.
How did you kind of evolve?
So my parents also like split us up in school. And I think that played a really big part in our dynamic today. And it wasn't until we both went off to college that we split up. So she went to the beach. I went to the mountains. We went on opposite sides of the state.
Yeah. All right. There you go.
We didn't speak for like 6 months, I think.
Really?
I think,
you didn't even speak?
Think about it.
Was there an argument or anything? Or was it just
no
like
argument.
separation?
It was just, and also the conversation of splitting up and like going on different paths. It was not a conversation. Like it was just like, I'm going here. I'm going here. That was it. And I think we just really didn't identify with the fact that we were twins and we maybe should like be together, want the same things. We were very different, especially growing up. And yeah, you have to think about it. I'm now 17, 18 years old, and this is the first time I am an individual. This is the first time that people meet me.
You're
and
not
they
saying
say, and
now. You're saying in that moment.
In that moment, when we split up, it was the first time that people would meet me, and it's just like, hey, I'm Maddie. And instead, it's not like my identical twin is next to me. It's like, then it's like, hey, I'm Maddie, hey, I'm Morgan. And it's like, oh my God, you guys are twins. Like, whoa.
And that's
and
a
it's
conversation.
never, yeah. And then the conversation is then every question is like, what do you guys think about this? Like, you know, where are you guys from? And it's you guys. It's never just like, hey, Maddie, like, so like, what do you think about this? Or like, hey, Morgan, like, what was this like for you? And you just automatically get grouped together and you never have to ask even yourself, what do I want in this moment?
I was going to say, do you ever think about like another life, not a twin, and like not particularly attractive? Do you ever think about that? Same person, same brain, same soul, but just...
Yeah, that would be crazy. I haven't thought about that exactly, but me and my sister have talked about like, what if we didn't split? Like, what if we were one person? What would that person look like? Because, like what would our life path have been? Because I think if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have modeled and my life would be completely different today, which is a really crazy thought.
Yeah. I mean, things would become, probably your life would be like very different reality. I think a lot about body image issues is, so I was thinking about, there was a movie back in, I think like the 80s. Do you know who Dustin Hoffman is? Have you ever heard of him? He's an actor, doesn't matter. He played a role. He's like kind of a comedian, very famous, Rain Man, been in a bunch of movies. Okay. He played a role in a movie called Tootsie where he dressed up as a woman. And when he made this movie, he was like a very famous male celebrity actor, not particularly attractive, but you know, very well off guy. So he plays this actor in a movie who's playing a woman. So he's dressing up as a woman in this movie. Right. And he remembered the first day he was telling the story about how he was on set and they put the mirror, like he had all this makeup done. It was the first time him seeing himself with the same features as a woman. So just like a converted over to woman. And he said, I would never have talked to myself in a bar if I was a woman. Does that make sense? Like, he realized in that moment that if he had been born as a woman, he would completely rule out ever getting to know him. And he realized the significance of that for him, like how much he's missing out on just because he's limiting who he interacts with based on looks. And so I just think people do that though all the time. I mean, that is the essence of pretty privilege. That is where it's coming from. It's coming from a place of like just judging people on the way they look. But I think people aren't fully realizing that all the time, especially with guys. Guys are like, there's the constant thing that girls talk about where, and I became aware of, like, guys aren't thinking about this, but like, say a guy goes up to a group of girls and there's 3 girls and he's really only talking to the one. Like a lot of guys, honestly, I've done this too. Not on purpose, but like you're not even thinking about these other girls as humans. You're thinking about them as like the friend of the girl you're trying to talk to. And it is just, I guess I'm just becoming aware of how much that affects the society, I guess. I don't know. Yeah. It's not really a question, more of just like a sad statement about.
No, yeah, it is very interesting. I think for me, obviously like this is my only experience of reality, is like being a model and being a twin. So this is my normal.
Yeah.
But I have times where I fantasize about like, wow, what if I could just blend in a little bit? What if I could just like not have as much of a spotlight on me? That could be kind of nice. And I just like fantasize about like, oh, maybe I'll just like drop off and like no one will really know who I am and no one will look at me, and it sounds kind of nice. But again, it's the concept of like the grass is always greener. You always want what you don't have. So yeah, people
so
look
you may
at
as
me
well just like what you got.
Yeah, you got to just be grateful. That's
should,
like the secret to life, is just be like, I'm just glad that I have what I got.
I think people, again, like, you know how, honestly, I think the amount of attention that you might get walking around on the street is not nearly as extreme, but is comparable to like a celebrity, basically. Just more people are going to be looking at you, talking about you than the average person. So it's kind of like being a celebrity. And I always remember getting annoyed seeing celebrity like interviews where the celebrity's like, oh my God, my life's so hard. I can't go outside. I miss being a normal person. And everyone's like, my tiniest violin. Like, bro, you're Justin Bieber. Who gives a fuck? Like, you have like, calm down. But again, it's the same thing. We're going kind of back in circles, but like the empathizing with that reality is difficult for people. But it is your reality. This is the only reality you know. So moving on. But the twin stuff is just really interesting because it compounds. So let's talk about traveling though as a twin. What's that like for you guys? Especially, oh my God, like have you ever been to a country where they're like, they already are like not familiar with white people?
Oh yeah.
Because some countries you go to and you're blonde and that alone makes you a celebrity. Yeah.
So the first time that I did a modeling job, I moved to Mexico City for a summer.
You moved there?
You're say moved there.
I feel like you don't do trips. You're a mover.
Right. We can talk about that too, because I've learned a lot about how I like to travel and how I don't like to travel.
Okay, we should get into that.
And yeah, definitely. So I moved. I say I moved there. It's because I lived there for almost 3 months.
Okay.
And that was my first trip where I got an agency and I got signed, and I was going there to work and to live. And my sister came with me, of course. So having her was crucial for me because leaving home was so hard and this very scary thing. I think a lot of people want to travel, but the idea of traveling alone is so daunting. And they definitely don't want to, I don't know, it's a lot harder. So to have her...
yeah, that's not fair, actually.
What, that
I'm jealous now.
No, it's actually, I'm so thankful for it. That's sick,
because you can like split everything. You've got another person right there who can, like, I solo travel a lot, but I'm like, it would be kind of cool if I could just, I mean, I would be obnoxious. I would get sick of myself. But
it's good and bad though, because so you have this person that is like comfort for you and a piece of home, and they can kind of keep you grounded.
And just another set of eyes too, to watch out.
Oh yeah, and to help plan and to help pay for things, just like you said. But at the same time, it's kind of like when you're in a long-term relationship and you get really comfortable with them, right?
Yeah.
And you start doing everything together, and you're like, "Hey, babe, like, do you really want to go out tonight? Like, we could just sit on the couch. It'd be nice." So like,
they're not pushing you as much to go do stuff.
Yeah, if you were alone, you would be forced to go out and to make friends and to do.
Well, you wouldn't be, actually, because you know I'm very introverted. I'm very like I've spent most of my life alone, to be honest with you. I've had like, just the way I was raised, and because of my career choices, I spent a lot of time alone. And so when I solo travel, sometimes it's like I have gone to places and just done nothing. Like I am in that mindset with myself where I meet people now. It's hard for me to even, but you've always been with someone, is what I'm saying. So being by yourself truly must be kind of nice sometimes, like solo traveling. Yeah. When was the first time you solo traveled? Was it Mexico City?
No, so she did come with me. I haven't done much solo traveling.
Yeah, you haven't probably, right?
Because she's been with me like this whole time. Because we've kind of hitched on our paths, and we were like, okay, we're both modeling, and we're gonna see if maybe this twin thing gives us an edge.
Does it give you an edge?
It has. I think originally it didn't seem like it would. We kind of got a lot of feedback from agents, and they were like, yeah, but you know, the twin thing, people aren't really gonna want to hire both of you. They're just gonna want one, and the twin jobs are really few and far between, and it's only when they want sisters. So we have done
that was my first thought. That's what I was kind of wondering, if like supply and demand. I was kind of like, but it hasn't been like that.
I do think it helps, and I think people get really excited, and it does set us apart from being, you know, just like every other blonde in the industry. But But yeah, we've gotten like a few jobs together. It's always stuff that they wanted sisters for. And it's always so much fun. Like when we can work together. Yeah. And we're both very creative. So we like to be in the same city so that we can at least maybe do some creative shoots together. Because there's a lot of, again, it's just very exciting. Even photographers will be like, oh, like I'm thinking of this concept and it'd be really cool to do it with twins. And like, there's a lot of, you can like get a lot of depth there with like the type of stuff that you create. And we're super passionate about it as well. But yeah, so we've always traveled together because it just made sense business wise. And again, because it was more comfortable, for sure.
For sure. Can you talk about, this was so interesting, your internal dialogue and how you are so comfortable with your twin. It's almost like when you're speaking with her. So we actually had coffee before. This is the first time we've met.
Yeah.
But we met, like, so this is a brand new conversation. But I was asking her, I was complimenting her. I was telling you should start a podcast, but you should start a podcast. Yep. Comment below if you think she should start a podcast.
Let me know if you think I should start a podcast.
You should. But I was saying you speak very well. You have a very good way of expressing yourself. You express your thoughts clearly, and that's difficult. Not everybody can do that. Right. And that's why you should do a podcast. But you said that it was because you're a twin, kind of.
Right. Yeah. So I was telling you earlier, but it's interesting having a twin because, again, you experience so much together. But when you do have individual experiences, you kind of get to come home, and what most people would do is they would go like into their room and they would go alone, and they would probably just like not really.
Well, they do is they would just be all up here.
It would be all up there, or they just wouldn't even reflect about it at all.
No, you're reflecting.
Okay, I don't know what it's like. I don't know.
Most people, I think, are reflecting, subconsciously or consciously.
It's all just thoughts that get jumbled, and unless you're like someone that really likes to journal, it can kind of get like lost in your head. Yeah. And for us, we come home and we call it like, we just like debrief. We're like, hey, like, what's up? How was that? How are you feeling? And you get to basically have a conversation with yourself. Because we have the same upbringing, we have the same brain, and we've had a lot of the same experiences. So
you've had a lot of the same input.
So we have
like system input, world input, because you're modeling and traveling together. Growing up input.
Right.
Yeah.
So we do have our slight differences for sure, but we're so similar that when we have conversations, it's not that we can read each other's minds, but you just really understand each other on
know like where they're going to go.
Yeah, I know what she's thinking. I know where she's going. But what I'm getting at here is I come home and I basically get to have this inner dialogue, but it's with myself essentially.
But it's out loud, I think.
But it's out loud.
So you're forced to, your brains, you do have two brains. They're basically the same, but you do have two brains. Yes. I don't actually know your sister, so I have no idea. Yeah. But from what you said, very similar.
Right.
But you still have to communicate, these complex thoughts. And the only way for humans to go back and forth is speaking. And so you've just been forced to verbalize your thoughts from a young age. Yeah. Because most of what a podcast is literally, I think it's train of thought. I'm not really thinking about what I'm saying right now. It's more of just a natural conversation. Yeah. And that's why it flows. And so you're just doing that with your sister all the time.
Right. And honestly, like from doing that over the years, I feel like we just are able to grow so much because you basically are able to reflect and talk about it and like bounce ideas off of someone who understands you on a level that no one else does. You can reach these levels of understanding yourself and the other person on like, it's just such a deeper level. And I feel like because of that, we've been able to grow so much mentally. Like, I feel like a lot faster than maybe most people. And I don't know if you like believe in manifesting, but even manifesting, because like you have
two people manifesting thoughts.
Our ideas out.
Oh, that's not fair. This is a cheat code. Would it be interesting if in the future, if they could, how would you feel about like genetically coding kids to be twins? Like what if in the future, they probably will figure out how to do that eventually.
Yeah, I think they're already like on the way.
Do you think people would start doing it? Like probably. Like if you,
twins?
So like by the time you have kids, would you, and you could choose?
No, I wouldn't.
You wouldn't?
But that's just because I am like a very, I don't know, a naturalist,
But it is genetic too, right? So the chances are kind of higher for you.
This is something that I should know as a twin. I feel like I should know all the
Bad
twin
representation.
facts.
Come on now.
I know. Sorry, guys. I don't know who hired me.
The twin representation. I love that because I've been pulling people like a friend I had from Panama last week, but I'm just talking to my friends. Like I want to talk to people, but I actually am asking questions as if he's like the representative of Panama. And at some point he's like, dude, I don't know. Right. It's like, I can't speak for Panama right now. I'm just like living here. So this is not the official ambassador of being a twin, but like, maybe, I don't know.
To get back to your question is, I think, so it is genetic, but as an identical twin, it's when the egg splits, which is kind of a mutation. But fraternal twins is when 2 eggs drop, and that I know is genetic.
Okay.
I could be wrong. Maybe both are genetic, but it does skip a generation. So
you probably won't.
It's pretty much
twins.
Impossible for me to have twins, but
Makes sense.
My kids, it's very likely, I would say.
Very likely.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know, like, can you go back in the generations before you, like your mom's parents?
So when my mom found out she was having twins, she didn't believe it. So she went and like looked.
Yeah.
And there has not been twins in my family for like 200 years, which is why I think I think identical is not genetic.
It's a mutation.
Yeah, so we're a mutation. I'm a mutation actually because I'm the youngest one. So
are you? You were born after?
Yeah.
You were like the one that wasn't supposed to be. You like latched on. You're like, no. 2 of us. It is so interesting. I don't know. The whole idea. Would you ever go to like a twin conference or anything and meet a bunch of other twins?
I don't know. I think it's a little weird.
I think it's I would be literally frightened.
I know. I think it's weird. And again, like I don't know. Some twins are so close, and because me and my sister split up, we're just really not like that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, like we had this like these male twins kind of hitting on us at one point, and they were very interested in like that, like the twins dating twins thing, and we immediately were like, you guys are weird. We're not doing that.
I was getting to the whole, because it's got to be a thing, right? Like just more guys are going to hit on you in a slightly creepy way, considering there's 2 of you.
Right. Yeah. Which is annoying.
It's weird, but I think more interesting is like actually dating people. What is that like? Because not many people have another person that they share everything with.
Right.
So I'm sure you get asked this a lot, but a lot of people don't know. So what is that like for you? So for us, as we started dating, we were actually living in different cities. Okay.
So we didn't run into like any weirdness. I will say now that we've been traveling together for the past 3 years, we've both been single, and it kind of hasn't been weird. Like we don't really gravitate towards the same people. But I will say, when I think about the person that I want to date or maybe end up with, it would be nice for the first time that they meet me to meet Maddie and not to meet like the twins.
Right.
And I also think that from an outside perspective as a guy, it's very overwhelming and confusing, I would assume, because you're kind of having to figure out which one you're more attracted to, and you don't know the differences.
I mean, that's honestly a very real, that's keeping it real. Cause like that thought must run across. I've never dated a twin, but it's like that thought must run across their mind. Like,
absolutely.
What if I meet her sister and I actually end up like that? Has that ever happened? Come on.
No, it hasn't happened, but I've had guys guys have told us, we were like, so how did you pick? And this one guy said, basically when we all met at the same time. So we met us together, and we were like, talking. Which one are
you going to hit on? You don't even, have to choose.
So we were all talking. It's just, very just friendly. And at one point in the conversation, I was like, yeah, like I gotta go out to LA for a couple weeks, like here soon. And he basically then in that moment was like, okay, so I'm going to go for the one that's in town in the next couple weeks.
And you kind of saw that switch.
No, so they ended up seeing each other like for a little bit, and she asked him, and he told it. She was like, "So how did you pick?" And he was like, "Honestly,
it was just supply and demand.
You were the one that was in town."
She left. She was in the other city.
And then other times they just say like, it's honestly whichever one they see first. Like if someone approaches you in a club, it's like, oh well, I saw her, so I approached her, and then you're like, oh whoa.
It's interesting though. I wonder. I don't know. The romantic in me wants to be like, it's not that simple. But maybe it is that simple.
No, it's not. And I mean, both of those examples were not serious relationships.
Yeah.
It was very just, casual. But as far as like more intimate relationships, I think because we are actually very different, the types of people that she gravitates towards are completely different than the type of people that I do. And
that
I
makes
would
sense.
even
You found
say,
your types and they're slightly different. Yeah.
Yeah. And especially when it comes to like close relationships, you're getting to know someone on a much deeper level, and at a deeper level, me and my sister are actually
different.
opposite in a lot of ways. We kind of balance each other out.
Makes sense.
So yeah,
I think the idea though, so you said you had two, like a set of twin guys like hitting on you both, and you were like, wait a second.
Yeah, I was like, what's going on here, guys? What's the end game? This is weird.
Well,
and he said, he said that.
Do you think that's like their shtick? Like they're just going around the world trying to find sets of twins?
I don't know.
That would be a weird.
I hope not.
I hope not too.
Something interesting.
I'm sure people do that though. That's got to be a thing. Yeah,
definitely. But something interesting about them is their mom never told them which one was older. She hid their birth certificates, and they asked, and they were like, which one of us is the older brother?
She was like, you're never going to know.
We want to know. And they were like 30, and they still didn't know who was the older brother.
I mean, does it matter really?
It doesn't, but I will say.
But I feel like twins do care. Like,
no, it's not that, but I will say like the older sister and younger sister dynamic, me and my sister have that. We have the same birthday. She's 10 minutes older than me, but she is my big sister, and like I am little sister. And it's actually shaped our personality traits
yeah, she's
differently.
More of the big sister.
Right.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Just the knowledge of it. So what do you think maybe that's why they're fucked up, because they didn't know what they were.
I think they had this struggle of like, which one of us is the boss here? Which one of us is big bro?
The twin fetish or something. That's did not develop well. No. It's interesting. Let's talk about traveling. I mean, you're very well traveled, and you said you like to, when you travel, I'm more of a 2 weeks kind of guy, 1 to 2 weeks, but you like to move somewhere spot. And like,
so for me, I think the reason why I travel the way that I do is because I've always traveled for modeling. So it really started off as, I justified travel with, this is an investment in my career, and obviously in my life experiences, but I didn't really travel just for fun. It was always to model.
You always had a mission. I
was very career oriented. So Mexico, I traveled to model, and that was 2 months. And as a model, when you're new to a market, you really have to give it at least 2 months. It's kind of what your agents will tell you. Okay. Is you need to be in a market for 2 months, because you'll get into town and they'll be like, no one knows your face. No one knows who you are. And if you want to make money, you need to stay. So that's kind of the base of what started it. Is it was at least 2 months. And I ended up getting to the point where I was like, I want to stay longer. I want to feel like this is more of a home, because you would get this taste of the local life, but 2 months isn't long enough to really make friends. And, really like
to really connect with anybody, to do anything really. Yeah.
But it's long enough that like you feel so distant from home, and it's really lonely. So we started kind of extending, and, now I would say, so for the past 2 years, I've lived in, I think, 5 cities, and each time it's usually around like 4 to 8 months.
Really?
Yeah. So
that's your go-to.
I wanted to, I don't know. I like the slow travel. Like, I don't like to try to do it all quickly. I'm just kind of a chill person, and I like to take my time, but I still want to fully experience a place. So I was like, I'm just going to stay even longer on these work trips, and hopefully also I'll make better money as a model, which it was true. It was good, but
I do what I'm calling now, I was just talking to my brother about it. I'm calling it neighborhood traveling, where you define a neighborhood and you live in that neighborhood. Because it's like there's 2 types of travel for me. Content traveling, where I'm just trying to go to locations because I'm a photographer, I'm shooting. So like that's where I'm just trying to hit hot spots with good light. And then the other kind of travel I do is more like that, a little bit slower, not as slow as you are. 4 months is a good amount of time. Yeah. But like, I like to just get to know a neighborhood. And I think we were talking about New York. You might move to New York. A lot of people, what they're doing wrong in New York is they try to do too much. They're in tourist mode. It's better just to go hang out in New York, or any kind of city. Paris, I talked about this on a podcast before, but Anthony Bourdain has a good quote about Paris, about how the way you should do Paris is like chill.
Right.
Like, go read a book, get some wine, hang out in a park, Yeah,
doing the touristy stuff is like, I don't know. I hate it so much. I'd rather just go to a cafe. And
it is a funnel. They're trying to funnel you away from, like, it's just a way to keep Like you can come, it's just all tourist stuff is a way for countries to take your money without having to integrate you into their actual society. It's like a way just to keep, that's what Times Square is. It's like, we're literally going to build massive screens to sell you shit, but we're going to label it a tourist attraction. And then we will funnel them all here so that people in Midtown who are actually working don't have to worry about the tourists.
Wow. I actually never thought about it that way. That's very interesting.
I mean, that's why they have these tours. That's good. If you live in a city that's popular, let them build that, like if you don't want the tourists to be everywhere, let them build tourist stuff. And then you won't have to worry about them, And then if you're someone who wants to travel, like, a little slower, choose a neighborhood and get to know the neighborhood. Find your coffee shop. Go to that coffee shop a few times. Get to know the staff a little bit. Make friends. See the friends multiple times. Don't just go to a restaurant once. For me, at least, I prefer to get to know what I like at the restaurant. Nothing's more satisfying than going to a city and finding a good cafe right away and being like, I'm gonna go to this cafe a bunch of times. I love doing that.
It's nice to find like a little piece of, I want to say home, but just like a little something that's like familiar to you. So
a sense of routine.
Exactly, which is important when you travel long term.
Yeah. Otherwise you'll burn out so quickly.
Yeah.
And this is more popular now too, because you've been traveling, which is cool, is you've been traveling for a while.
Yeah.
Lots of people, because of remote work, are doing it now. People who traditionally haven't been able to. And so that's honestly why I started this podcast, because I think people on the move is only going to become more popular. So I think if you're someone like, don't exhaust, the biggest thing I hate having to move hotels. I try to minimize moving spaces as much as possible when I'm ever going somewhere. I would rather drive farther and stay in one place than have to pack my bags, check out, check in. Right. And you're definitely not doing that. I mean, you really are living in, I'd say 3 months you've lived in a place. Yeah.
I do think that the slow travel is really glamorized right now. And that's kind of what got me into it. And you can go on Instagram and just find so many like travel videos that are so inspiring, and you're like, I'm gonna get a remote job. I'm gonna live out of a suitcase and just go for it and see the world.
Why not?
That's good, but also I'm experiencing some of that burnout.
Yeah.
And the thing with traveling full time and not having a home base that you go back to is you don't have that routine. And when you're in a new place every few months, you don't have the opportunity to develop really deeper connections and relationships. You can't join like community events. So like if you want to join like a book club or like a sports
you can't
league,
become involved with anything really. Yeah.
So everything that you're experiencing is new, and that can be exciting for a while, but after some time you just don't have like things that I think are important for your overall well-being.
Well, and the thing too is like, I'm sure you've experienced this a little bit, but when I first started doing these trips, you get really close with people when you travel. And I remember when I first started doing it, I was like, these people are my best friends. And they are. Like, I really got along. Everyone gets along so well. And then you do stay in touch on Instagram, but eventually, most of the time, it will fizzle, at least for me. A lot of times, it just can't be, because you're in different parts of the world, realistically. So it's like when you're meeting friends or you're meeting people and you're so close with them, and the expiration date is like, for me, 2 weeks, for you, 4 months, not expiration date, but you're not going to see them as much.
There's an end stamp, and it really puts a wall up between you and everything that you're experiencing. And no matter how much you love it, it's going to end. And in some ways that's really amazing, and hopefully you can just be grateful. But in a lot of other ways, it's kind of this escape route.
Well, I've had to build like a new category of friends. So it's like, I have a whole, like I built it. When I grew up, it would be like, I had friends and they would usually just turn into my good friends, or I'd have like acquaintances, but they would, like, if you were my friend, you were probably like, I was seeing you a lot. You were like my good friend, and I would share everything with you, and, like a brotherhood or whatever it was. And then I started trying to you can't really, I have built a wall a little bit when I'm meeting new people, just because I think I've met a lot of people now. And so I'm not as willing to share myself. This isn't even like relationship wise, but even friendship wise, I'm not willing to, I'm just not willing to share as much now, just because I know that I'm probably not going to see you. Right.
And I think for some people that really works, and traveling can be very addicting. And it's honestly like, there's a lot of positives that come out of it, I would say. But for me, and I think for a lot of people, you start to really want that closeness and that like deeper level. And, you know, when you live a more mundane life and you kind of have your routines and you have time to get bored, you have time to grow in ways that you can't when you travel.
Yes.
You have time to like develop skills and hobbies.
It's really hard to learn new things when you're on the road.
There's no time when you're constantly thinking about like, where am I going to go next? When am I going to buy that plane ticket? Where, like, I got to get an Airbnb. You're kind of in this like,
you're in survival mode, kind of. It is like you don't, because even when I'm out here, it's hard for me to do emails or take calls because I don't know when I have, like I have to reschedule a lot. I'm flaky with people because it's just hard.
Zones.
Yeah, it's just tough. Yeah. But yeah, it is difficult. I don't know.
Yeah, so like I think with anything, you need balance. So, you know, traveling, I think you kind of have to find what works for you. And I've definitely learned what is going to work for me is probably the 2-week trips. Like you kind of, I need a home base where I can come back to and I have my people and my safe space. And then you get to still travel and experience the world, which, you know, it is an amazing thing and it really opens up your eyes. And when you do have the opportunity to get out into the world, your perspective opens up so much and the world feels a lot smaller and you kind of gain this confidence in, oh, I can do hard things. I can, because when you're doing new things and you're having to figure out things for the first time and then you do it, it gives you so much confidence that I don't know if I would have gotten that any other way than traveling.
Totally. That's very true. I don't know. I think it's definitely a good trade-off. Like I wouldn't trade it for anything, but grass is always greener. Yeah. Where would you recommend, like solo traveling for females is really popular now. This is like a big trend currently where, you know, you've traveled not solo, but like kind of solo with a twin.
I have done one solo trip. Okay. I went to Ireland. It was a very short trip and it was for a modeling job, but I basically extended over the weekend so I could have a couple days to myself. Nice. And I loved it.
You loved Ireland?
I loved it.
I've heard about Irish charm. I've heard it's very real.
Irish people are so nice and so funny. It's so safe. So I would strongly recommend for solo female travelers.
It's safe.
It's definitely safe. Yeah.
Ireland? I feel like they're drunk all the time.
I mean, maybe they're drunk, but they're probably very happy about
safe, is it?
Yeah, I felt very safe there. Okay. I felt very safe and very welcomed.
I'm trying to get Irish people like canceled. I have no idea.
I loved it. And definitely Australia is also very, very safe.
I've heard only good things about Australia, really.
Yeah.
The only thing is it's far.
It's far. And I will say, if you want to experience culture as an American, I felt like the culture was very similar to America. Okay. So I didn't get that, I don't know, that excitement as much.
Yeah, I mean that's the case for sure. Like it's like it just depends on how far you want to jump with traveling. But I definitely think it's worth it to go sometimes places where you don't have all the amenities that you have in America. And I could see how Australia, like a lot of the technology and things would be similar.
For me, like I wanted to go somewhere that they spoke English. Yep. And I just felt I felt more comfortable with Australia.
Every Australian I've ever met has been really cool. And I mean, they're always like, everyone is like, yeah, do you like him? Yeah, he was great. Yeah, I thought he was great too. She was super nice. So cool. They're the best. That's always how it is with Australians.
Yeah, they're really nice and really funny.
Yeah, they're funny. They're just cool. They're relaxed. What are they feeding them over there? What are they doing right in Australia?
They are just, I mean, living there for so long was amazing. And it really made me look at life in America differently. Just because in Australia, you can tell there's so many systems put in place that value people's safety, just in general. Like I felt so safe there.
Crazy idea, putting ideas in systematic safety.
Right? Yeah, like to have like the people's best interests at heart. Like, what is that?
It seems like Americans are so conditioned, especially in LA, to think like the idea of not having to lock your car is absurd. But in reality, and maybe in Australia you have to lock your car, but the idea of general safety is like pretty insane for a lot of people. They can't even process it.
Yeah. In Sydney, I mean, you have like surf bums just walking around like barefoot and everyone's just so relaxed. So like.
But you know what? I think the cool thing about Australia, so I would never live I love like Japan. I love Korea. I love being there. I love visiting. I would never live there because the problem is like I hate Like you can leave your backpack on the ground in Japan and no one's going to steal it.
Really?
Which is great and it's convenient, but it's also like, why would I leave my backpack on the ground? It's almost like I wish someone would steal my backpack because I left it on the ground. Like, take my phone. I left it there. Like, I want a little edge. Or when we're waiting at this, like, they don't jaywalk ever. So if there's no cars coming, nowhere in sight, it's in the middle of the night and the stoplight says don't walk, they won't walk. I like Australia because they still have the safety, but they still have that, like, I don't know, like a little more loose, like the shirts off, shoes off kind of up. They have like the freedom of beach, but also the safety.
Yeah.
Do you think? I've never been. This is all speculation.
So for me, it was nice and I felt very comfortable, but I missed a little bit of that excitement, I guess. You travel to the other side of the planet and you kind of you're wanting something that's new and different. But for me, I felt honestly so close to home being from North Carolina. Like the city was so clean and it's really beautiful and surrounded by nature. The people are nice. The lifestyle is slow. And I felt more at home in Sydney than I have in New York or LA. And the interesting thing about Australia that I didn't really know before going is there's not a lot of people that live there compared to the United States because the population's small, right? It's small. You have basically on the East Coast, you have all of your kind of major cities, and then out west you do have Perth. But other than that, like in the middle, it's just all the outback. So
and no one lives there.
Yeah, I think I actually looked it up the other day because I was curious, and the entire population of Australia is less than the population of California.
Really?
Yeah. And then,
really?
Yeah.
The entire population is less than California alone?
Yes. Which it was very shocking. I was like, it feels like there's not as many people in the city. Like Sydney felt very relaxed to me. And so I was curious and yeah.
I think that's part of, honestly, I think that's part of the problem with like the US is we're just too big and we're too like we think like that's why Scandinavian countries can operate better. Yes, they're better systems, but it's just easier to manage people when there's like a few million of them. I'm sure there's plenty, like millions in Australia, but
yeah, I mean, and in the United States, you can travel to a different state, a different city, and you can have so many different experiences.
Yeah.
And in Australia, I did a road trip up the East Coast, so I did see a lot of it, and I just didn't feel like there was as much diversity. And I think that's just my perspective.
Because there's not that many, there's not enough people for diversity, probably. I was telling my brother, I've been to a good amount of places in Europe, but there's still plenty of times where I mention a city or a spot that I haven't been, where like a European will be like, oh my God, how have you not been there yet? And I'm like, well, it's a different continent. It's on the other side of the world. I'm American. I grew up in America. And so for a German to go to Italy is almost like a Virginian going to Florida. Like it's similar distance, maybe a little bit closer, but I think people don't get enough credit. Like Europeans just don't understand that it's just it's like a money thing. Americans, it's an ocean away. It's literally far. So America has the diversity in it. Like nature wise, you can find basically anything: beaches, mountains, deserts, and then people wise too. There's Louisiana. There's a very different state from Vermont, right? Those are two completely different cultures, even though they're both American.
Yeah, we really are a melting pot, and I didn't fully realized that until I lived in Australia for a while, and just kind of realized how many different experiences you can have just within the United States. There's a lot to see. It's
a big country. It takes a while to drive. Like there's just a lot here. I think people just forget about that. I certainly do. I for a while there was like, I don't even want to travel in the US, and I've slowly kind of reworked that mindset. I still prefer international travel because I think international travel is harder.
Yeah.
It just is. When I travel domestically, I feel like I'm on like easy mode. So I would rather get a lot of this, like these countries on my list out of the way now. Because like in 10 years, I don't know if I'm going to want to like spend 6 months in India or something. I'm like these difficult places that are... You're
not going to have the same drive and energy when you're older. And
I mean, customs lines alone are like reasons not to travel to countries for me.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, anyways, I think we covered a lot today.
Yeah, we did.
This was a good podcast. I'm trying to find a better balance of like talking about where people are from, but also bringing up just topics that are interesting to me and just